The next great war may not begin with a missile, a tank, or a speech from a capital city. It may begin with a delayed shipment, a closed refinery, or a mine in a country most people could not find on a map. Stay with me because by the end of this story, the device in your pocket, the car of the future, and even the balance of power between China and the United States will all look very different. We keep hearing that the future will be electric, digital, green, automated, and powered by artificial intelligence. That sounds sleek and futuristic, almost weightless. But the truth is much heavier. The future is mined. It is blasted out of rock, pumped from brine, hauled across deserts, processed in giant industrial plants, and shipped through vulnerable routes. Beneath all the talk of innovation sits a hard fact. The next economy runs on materials, and the fight to control them has already started. When people hear rare metals, they usually imagine some obscure mineral locked in a secret vault. In reality, this war is about lithium, cobalt, nickel, graphite, copper, and rare earth elements. The materials that power batteries, electric motors, wind turbines, military electronics, data centers, satellites, and advanced weapons. Your phone needs them. Electric cars need them. The energy transition needs them. Modern armies definitely need them, so this is not a niche mining story. It is the hidden skeleton of the modern world. Now look at the map, because this is where the whole story comes alive. Lithium is concentrated in Australia and the South American lithium triangle of Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. Cobalt is heavily concentrated in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Nickel is a huge story in Indonesia. Rare earth mining exists in several countries, but processing is where the real power begins. And that is where one country enters the story with enormous weight: China. This is the first big twist. The country that mines the resource does not always control the future. The country that refines, separates, converts, manufactures, and ships, it often holds much more power. A metal can leave the ground in Africa, South America, or Australia, and still pass through Chinese refineries before it becomes battery chemicals, magnets, or industrial components. That means the battle is not only about who owns the mine, it is about who controls the chain. For years, Beijing treated critical minerals not as a side business, but as the foundation of industrial power. It built refining capacity, chemical processing, magnet production, battery supply chains, and the manufacturing ecosystem around them. While other countries were happy to buy cheaper inputs and enjoy the convenience of global trade, China was building leverage. It was playing the long game while much of the West was still admiring quarterly earnings. That matters because the real bottleneck is often not extraction. It is transformation. Rare earths are the perfect example. Despite the name, many rare earth elements are not truly rare. The problem is that separating and processing them is difficult, expensive, and environmentally messy. So the advantage does not just come from having deposits. It comes from having the industrial system that can turn those deposits into usable materials at scale. And on that front, China built a lead that now shapes the global economy. Here is a surprising historical twist most people do not know. The United States once led the rare earth business. For a time, California's Mountain Pass mine was one of the most important rare earth operations in the world. But over time, cost pressures, environmental issues, and industrial offshoring helped shift that advantage away. China moved in aggressively, invested heavily, and eventually became dominant in processing and magnet production. In other words, this was not a law of geography. It was a strategic transfer of power. Then came the warning shot. In 2010, after a diplomatic clash between China and Japan, rare earth exports to Japan were sharply restricted. That moment sent a message to the world. If one country controls a critical industrial choke point, trade can become pressure very quickly. It was one of those lessons that was both obvious and ignored at the same time. Everyone noticed it. Not enough people changed because of it. Then the world got rougher. Pandemic disruptions exposed fragile supply chains. Wars reminded governments that dependence can become a weapon. Trade tensions intensified. Export controls became normal. Suddenly, politicians who had spent years talking about efficiency started discovering the strategic beauty of not being trapped. Now the stakes are even higher because demand is exploding. Electric vehicles, grid storage, artificial intelligence infrastructure, advanced electronics, drones, and modern weapons all push demand upward. This is the second surprising fact. The cleaner and more digital the world becomes, the more material intensive it also becomes. The futuristic economy still depends on trucks, ports, refineries, chemicals, wires, mines, and shipping lanes. The cloud, it turns out, has a lot of dirt underneath it. Look at cobalt. Much of the world's supply comes from Congo. That alone is a huge vulnerability. But the deeper problem is that a major share of refining has also been tied to China, and Chinese firms have held strong positions across parts of the Congolese chain. So one disruption in Central Africa does not stay in Central Africa. It travels through batteries, factories, and geopolitical strategy. Look at nickel. Indonesia realized that exporting raw ore was not the same as becoming powerful, so it pushed foreign companies to process more at home and tried to climb the value chain itself. That is another hidden layer of the story. The rare metal war is not only China versus the United States, it is also resource states trying to stop being treated as holes in the ground, while richer nations collect the real profits later in the chain. And that is where the war gets complicated. The United States and Europe now want resilient supply chains. They want domestic capacity, friendshoring, recycling, strategic stockpiles, and less dependence on China. All sensible goals. But building a mine takes years. Building refining capacity takes money, skill, and political patience. Communities resist new extraction. Reviews are slow. Prices swing wildly. Investors get nervous. Governments want security fast. Industrial systems move slowly. That gap between urgency and reality is one of the biggest dangers in the whole story. If you are enjoying this, subscribe now and tell me in the comments what seems more dangerous: relying on one dominant refiner or relying on unstable mining regions where the chain can break for completely different reasons. That question sits right at the center of the future economy. Because what happens if this system breaks? Imagine a serious shock. It does not have to be a world war. It could be a shipping crisis, a new export control, unrest in a mining country, a trade war, or a refinery shutdown. Suddenly, battery makers scramble. Car companies delay production. Defense suppliers worry about components. Wind and grid projects get more expensive. Politicians who promised a smooth energy transition start sweating on television. This is how modern vulnerability works. Quietly, then all at once. And here is the part most viewers do not expect. This is not just an energy story. It is a military story too. Rare earth magnets are used in electric motors, radars, precision systems, and advanced defense platforms. Critical minerals matter for drones, satellites, communication systems, and industrial resilience during conflict. So when major powers think about readiness, they are no longer just counting missiles and ships. They are also counting refineries, battery plants, magnet lines, and supply contracts. That is why governments have started talking less like free market optimists and more like industrial strategists. Tariffs are back. Subsidies are back. Resource nationalism is back. Countries are trying to secure supply, reshape trade, and build alliances around materials. The language sounds technical. The reality is not. This is power politics with a chemical formula. There is also a dark irony here. For years, globalization promised maximum efficiency. But efficiency without redundancy is really just vulnerability in a smart suit. Just in time works beautifully until geopolitics walks into the warehouse and turns it into just too late. That is funny for about 3 seconds, and then it becomes a national security briefing. Still, this is not a hopeless story. New mines are opening, recycling is improving, countries are learning, supply chains can diversify, battery chemistries can evolve. Resource states can bargain harder, but none of that changes the central truth. Whoever masters extraction, refining, logistics, and manufacturing together will shape the speed of the next industrial age. And that leads to the biggest twist of all. The winner of this contest may not be the country with the most rocks in the ground. It may be the country or coalition that builds the best system around them. Geology matters. Chemistry matters more. Logistics matter more than people think. And strategy matters most of all. So the rare metal war has already started. It is unfolding in mines, ports, laboratories, boardrooms, trade offices, and shipping routes. It is quieter than a conventional war, but it may shape the future more deeply than many conventional wars ever did. Because the country that keeps the batteries flowing, the magnets spinning, the grids connected, and the factories running will not just sell the future, it will influence who gets to build it. If you found this valuable, like the video, subscribe for more geopolitics and world explanation content, and comment below, who do you think really holds the strongest hand in this contest? The countries with the minerals, the country with the refineries, or the countries trying to rebuild the entire chain from scratch? Because the answer to that question may decide far more than the price of your next phone. It may decide who shapes the world everyone else has to live in.